Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this Lunch and Learn with the beloved Jason Bennington. We're grateful to have him. This is a follow-up from the previous Lunch and Learn that we had last month, talking about job coaching and job coaches, that sort of stuff. So we are happy to continue this conversation. And today we'll be talking more about on-site supports, that sort of thing after a job coach leaves. And so, as usual, put questions in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat. This will be recorded so we can share it out later. And we will go ahead and get started with Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. Just by way of like quick introduction, so I'm the employment support services specialist here at Vocational Rehabilitation (USOR), which means I work very closely with the services that we call supported employment, the providers, the community rehabilitation programs around the state that provide supported employment services. Um, and I appreciate being asked to do these couple of presentations, and I'm happy to be here today. I'll let Josh is going to kind of control the slides. He'll be able to tell hopefully when it's about time to go to the next slide. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here. So just a quick overview. We are going to talk a little bit about job coaching. We did do a prior lunch and learn recently that covered job coaching primarily. We're going to talk about that period where we're kind of transitioning from the formal support of a job coach into the more informal but readily available natural supports. So we'll talk about some different aspects of natural supports and identify what those kind of look like. And then to wrap things up at the end, we're going to give some time back to Josh and the business relations team to discuss a few other supports that can and should be available to clients on the job. So this is a pretty good recap of the previous presentation that we did. Job coaching. This is a service that gets provided by companies, entities around the state that are called community rehabilitation programs, or CRPs. It's a service that vocational rehabilitation generally funds. It's a service we pay for. There's also some other entities out there who will pay for this as well. It's a fairly common service for us to provide, but we find that the public isn't always aware of job coaching. Basically, when we're looking at job coaching, we're looking at a service that it supports people with disabilities who they might just need a little bit more assistance on the job, right? So when they get a job, they just might need somebody there to help them out a little bit in addition to what they're receiving from the employer. But always we're looking to increase that individual's independence, right? We want them to be working in that job in the most independent manner possible. Some things that we like to remind especially employers about when it comes to job coaching: job coaches are not performing the job for the employee. Generally, this isn't going to cost an employer any money. Our job coaches are trained professionals. They know how to be in a workplace supporting their client without interrupting or disrupting any of the other employees' projects and responsibilities and things that they might be working on. And then our CRPs out there, they have their own insurance, right? They're covered for things like liability. They're even covered with workers' comp at times if they're large enough. They have auto insurance, all things that should help sort of set an employer's mind at ease about having them present. So we talked previously about these sort of three stages of job coaching. Job coaching is considered a formal support. It's a service that's, as I mentioned, paid for through, vocational rehabilitation or maybe another program out there. But there's these three stages where we start with some of the initial activities, which we call job development and job placement. That's helping the client, find their job. On the job supports is exactly what it sounds like after the client has the job. And then we have the third stage, which is when we fade out the job coaching support and we sort of increase or begin implementing the natural supports a little bit more consistent. So this is kind of what the process looks like. This is a really simple sort of diagram with pictures here that kind of show an individual on the left who's meant to be a job coach introducing themselves to a client. Then the job coach and the employer are both involved in supporting the new employee. And then you'll see that the job coach is then gone and the employer is the one who's working directly with, this employee. This is as I mentioned, it's simple, but this is what the pathway is meant to look like, right? On the left side, we have somebody who needed the support, moving over to somebody who's much more independent and just working with their employer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Go ahead, Josh. Thanks. Sorry about that. So this is a side-by-side comparison of these two types of support, right? The formal support and then the more natural support. Formal supports, a person with a disability has probably come to vocational rehabilitation to get some assistance. They're assigned a counselor when they're found eligible. That counselor is going to help them navigate the different resources they might need in order to pursue employment out in the community. That might include a person or the VR counselor signing on an employment specialist. This is one of our CRPs, right? The employment specialist has specialized training where they are working with the client. They're assessing skills, abilities. They're assessing needs possibly that a client might have. They're going to then help that person identify different themes or different jobs that might interest that individual, that they might have skills and abilities in. And then they're going to help them look for those jobs. The employment specialist is working with that client through that entire process. They may even help them with interviews and things at times. Once the client gets a job, an employment specialist is also trained to do job coaching responsibilities. However, we also have another designation, which is specifically job coach. And a job coach is the individual who comes to the work site with the client, and they kind of get them going, right? They're going to help them learn those responsibilities up front. They're going to help them with any type of skill development and just adapting, to that new work environment. So those are just, that's kind of a nutshell version of like what some of those formal supports look like. Now, natural supports do obviously provide things that the client needs, that the new employee needs, but it's a little bit different. So these are all individuals that are going to be present on the job site, and then some that might be supporting the client with things outside of work, actually. So we have our supervisors. This could be supervisors, managers, anybody who has a responsibility for teaching and training new employees, right? Every new employee that starts a job, they have work tasks, they have responsibilities, they have things that they may not be very familiar with, and they're going to need some training on how to do those things. As they get a little bit better, they're going to start developing more skills and abilities within that position, and the supervisor is going to be there to help them along with that. In addition to people who are, in that supervisory capacity, another natural support are the coworkers, people that are working alongside this new employee. So all of us have probably pretty much experienced this before, where the supervisors off doing other responsibilities. As a new employee, we're left to do our tasks alongside some coworkers, and coworkers can be there to sort of help oversee, some of these tasks that we might doing. They can provide things like motivation and encouragement about how well something might be going. They can also provide some correction when needed, because none of us just get left to learn new tasks on our own. We generally rely on somebody when we're learning those things. Another thing that coworkers and supervisors kind of fall into is building that idea of camaraderie, right? Within a work environment, helping somebody feel welcome, help them feel like they're a part of something within that work site. And then we also have, I mentioned people who are kind of outside of the work site, but also act as natural supports, right? Families, friends, or other community peers and acquaintances and things like that. They could be helping with things that are more like soft skill related, right? things that might include making sure that the individual is wearing appropriate attire. If there's a uniform that they're supposed to be wearing, or if there's a very specific, workplace culture of a level of attire that they're supposed to be wearing, they kind of make sure that that's happening. And then those individuals also provide things like encouragement. With starting a new job, many people start to feel a little anxious and uncomfortable, and it's nice to have people in your corner that can give you that sort of motivation to go to work. So I did mention, we did talk a little bit about the job coach. This is kind of what the dual relationship looks like, with having on the job support from a job coach. And then we're also going to see here some of the responsibilities that the employer, still has. The onboarding, right? Those sort of initial shifts and things where paperwork's getting done. They're trying to introduce them to other people that work there. Those are things that the job coach can help facilitate. But the employer, somebody, employees that are there, a supervisor, manager, are generally present for that type of stuff. So they're kind of going hand in hand. Same thing with job tasks and responsibilities, right? Things that they're supposed to do as a requirement of the job. The job coach is there, kind of learning what it's going to be and then assisting that client for a period of time. That's also true of skill development, right? As we're repeating certain work tasks, we're developing a skill and we're getting better at it. Job coach is there. Number 4 mentions accommodation identification, right? So one of the great benefits of having a job coach present is they might be able to identify some accommodations that a client may need in relation to the job that they're doing and in relation to their job tasks. This is actually a great benefit to the employer who wants to have a successful employee who's able to do their job to the best of their ability. People, often we don't think about accommodations that we all might have, right? Something as simple as, being able to sit at a chair at a computer like I'm doing right now, instead of having to stand at a computer all day, right? Very simple type of a thing that is actually quite accommodating. Job coaches can help with that. They're professionals who see a wide variety of jobs. They work with a wide variety of clients. And so they may be able to identify something there. Job coaches do provide feedback and follow up with the new employee, right, with their client that they're working with. They let them know things that they're doing well. They let them know things that need to improve. And then they do that continuously, right? That's why they come to the job site. They're observing the client. They're helping them do the job for a period of time. And they're able to provide that feedback. They're improving that client's ability to do their job. And I also want to just mention that, we're always working in collaboration with the employers and with all of this stuff. When job coaches are present, they're going to communicate with supervisors and coworkers as needed, right? So especially with supervisors and that follow-up about how well they're doing, they definitely want the client to improve those skills and abilities to a standard that employer is happy with, right? That's the goal. And then after they've sort of met that standard, then they're starting to work on that fading piece. So employers working alongside job coaches, it's a great equation. So as we're fading out, I'll just mention a few things here that employers may not be prepared for. They may be aware of this, but these are some of the things that as an employer, you'll start to see as that job coach fades out, right? So you have supervisors, you have coworkers who are going to start basically assuming that role, right? Of, this individual over here, I'm responsible for them. I'm responsible for their performance. And so supervisors start to step in a little bit more frequently. Coworkers are going to be providing feedback a little bit more frequently with that individual because the job coach is fading out. If this new employee needs support and training, they're going to receive, the same thing as any other employee that's working in that position, right? If supervisors are meeting with a crew once a week, this person's going to get the same type of treatment, right? They're going to be meeting with that supervisor. Employers then, take on that performance review, right? Whereas a job coach was previously, talking with that individual about what their performance looked like. Now the employer's just doing that. They're letting them know the things that they're doing well, things that impress them, right? Giving them some encouragement there. And then also talking about areas where maybe they're falling a little bit short. Maybe they need a little additional training on something. I did talk about the accommodations, and this is where an employer, can continue to implement any accommodations that may have been identified, just to make sure that that client continues to be successful. And then we sort of have the other stuff that goes along with being in a work site, right? Being a part of the culture, being a part of activities that go on there. The employer then takes on that responsibility, same as they would for all of their other employees as well. So let's get to kind of the next part that we're going to talk about. That was all kind of a great recap of what job coaching looks like, a little bit of what the fading looks like. So natural supports, I mentioned earlier that these are sort of come after the formal supports have sort of run their course. Okay, so natural supports. This is a pretty good definition here that we liked. It's a relationship, it's interactions, it's assistance that allows a person to secure, maintain, and advance a job of their choosing that's out in the community. Okay, some of the items that it highlights, like having a typical work routine, right? Social interactions that go on there within the work site with employees, all things that are intended to basically enhance this individual's both work life, right? The social life at work, as well as non-work stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what the differences are here and kind of what this looks like within an employment setting. So I'm just going to note a few of these here. These are some great examples of what natural supports might be, right? So if an employee's supervisor meets weekly with the employee to talk about their tasks and accomplishments, right? That's actually a natural support, right? Because the supervisor, they have a responsibility for their employees. So they're meeting with all of their employees on a weekly basis. If we go down a little bit, there's a bullet point here that mentions team members taking a few more minutes to explain an assignment, right? I mentioned how coworkers are definitely a part of natural supports. There's another bullet point there that talks about coworkers giving, reminders, about what's going on in the workplace. In this case, it mentions a meeting that's coming up, right? These are some things that as an employee, probably we'd all expect a little bit of something, right? Instant messaging with coworkers, having a supervisor check in with us. All of those types of things are things that we've come to maybe expect within our jobs. And that's what natural supports look like in a work site. So I want to talk a little bit about, three aspects of natural supports. The first being relationships. Okay. There's, two different types of relationships that are always going on in a workplace. There are work relationships. Okay. These are things that are directly related to the job itself, learning your tasks, your responsibilities, getting help or requesting help from supervisors or coworkers, making sure you know what the policies, procedures, and these formal rules are of the workplace. In addition to that, we have the more social relationships that go on, right? This is more about the cultural norms that are in the job site, right? We have sort of informal rules that everybody kind of, goes by. These are things that are going to help a client to fit in into that work culture and in that environment. So we're going to take a look here next, I think, at what some of these might look like. So in a workplace, some typical work relationship things have been highlighted in the left column here versus some social ones. So we have a situation, a client or an employee is asking a supervisor how to fill out a timesheet appropriately and on time. That's a pretty standard work relationship with your supervisor. Socially, if you're asking a supervisor where most people take their breaks throughout the day, that's a little bit more closely related to the culture. Do people have a break room that they go to? Do people go to an area outside? Do they stay in an office? Or do people leave during breaks? And kind of finding out what that looks like. Another work relationship example here, asking a coworker if work tasks have been completed as instructed and to standard, right? Turning to a coworker and saying, hey, how did I do on this? Right? And then they can provide some feedback about how well you did or didn't do on a task or responsibility. That's directly work related. Now, if you're asking a coworker how long they've worked with the company and what they like about the job, that's more of a social interaction, right? And that's something that is pretty typical in a workplace, especially for somebody who started a new job and maybe they're having some conversation with another employee or two. Yeah, asking them something like that, pretty social. You're getting some feedback about what they do and don't like, maybe. Yeah. Another common one that I just want to highlight here is the shadowing a coworker, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about shadowing and mentoring. But if you're shadowing a coworker as they perform whatever the required duties and responsibilities are, that's definitely a work relationship. Okay. However, if you're just sitting and talking in a break room with coworkers, right, about whatever's going on in your life or their life or what they did last night, that's definitely more the social side of things. But all of these relationships serve as natural support to that new employee. These are things that we all have probably experienced as we've started a new job. So why are these relationships important? The work relationships as well as the social relationships. I've highlighted a few things here that are definitely important. One is the idea of having an inclusive workplace culture. Okay. So like just helping everybody feel like they're included and part of the culture there, part of, whatever it is everybody's working towards, right? This is where people start to feel comfortable. They start to feel really good with the place that they work. And when people ask them, like, what do you think of your job? And if they say, oh, it's a great place to work. I love these things that we do. And I love my coworkers, right? Like they support me. We're talking about this inclusivity in the workplace. Now, it also enhances employee knowledge, right? And understanding. If you've got a coworker, if you've got a supervisor who are there supporting you as you are learning new tasks and responsibilities, right? It's increasing your knowledge. And that's what we're doing here as well. When we have good work relationships, you've got somebody who's, probably training and, observing a new employee. Yeah, it's going to increase their ability to do that job. We are building strong connections and loyalty, right? I just mentioned, like, if somebody asks them what they think of their job and they're talking about what a great company it is and it feels great when I go to work, like, things like that. You're talking about building loyalty with an employee, right? An employee who has some form of buy-in and enjoys being where they're at, right? So you're building that connection and that loyalty with them. This is also going to lead to improved performance, right? Improved outcomes, right? Whatever it is your company is doing, if you have employees who are feeling, comfortable in their work environment, if they're feeling some encouragement and enthusiasm from coworkers and supervisors, and they feel like they're part of a group, their performance is going to go up, right? And as their performance goes up, the outcomes are going to get better. Like you're going to have higher quantity, better quality of the, responsibilities and tasks that they're doing. And always, like, this chain's kind of, signifying here, it's going to strengthen that team cohesion, right? Hey, we're in this together. We're working together. We're all supporting one another. And we're just making this the best place it can be because we got to spend a lot of time here together. So just a few cool bullet points about it. In addition to relationships, we have interactions within a work environment. Okay. Now, I've given some examples here of what interactions might look like. These are probably all interactions that most people experience at one time or another in their job, right? There's a picture here of some one-on-one instruction going on between, a chef and, a new employee, right? They're getting that one-on-one time, some individual training and attention. And then I've got team projects, right? I've got a landscaping team here, right? That's working together. They're all working on the same project. They're all taking their responsibility, doing their thing, but they're all part of something bigger, right? That's another type of interaction. When it comes to training, especially group training, that's something that many of us go through, where you have a lot of people together learning the same things at the same time. That's another form of interaction between employees in a workplace. And then we have some casual interaction, right? This is a little bit more of the social relationship, right, that we're talking about. In this case, I've got, a few, I think, teachers that are like standing in a hallway here, just chatting, right? It's just a casual interaction, kind of helping people feel a connection with the people around them that's not specific to their work tasks. But these interactions all serve as natural supports, right? In some cases, we're receiving instruction and training, and in others, we're building relationships. We're building a connection with other people. These are a few, as when it comes to assistance, right? So our third sort of area that we're talking about is going to be assistance here. These are some of the sources that we might be looking at on the job site. Now, we talked about job coaches, right? They can definitely be providing assistance, especially that initial upfront, onboarding, integration, the task and responsibilities that they're learning upfront. And then we kind of pass that along to the supervisors or managers and the coworkers, colleagues that they might be working with. They're also a source of assistance. If you are struggling with something and you can go to a coworker and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing this quite right. Do you mind coming and letting me know what I'm doing wrong? Or maybe you can provide some feedback about, this thing that I've been working on, this project. I need somebody to look at it and kind of check it for me, right? Doing those kinds of things, getting that type of assistance is a perfect example of natural support. I've also listed human resources there. Sorry about that, Josh. I did give a pause. We'll talk a little bit more about human resources, but human resources is another area where employees can receive assistance, and we'll talk a little bit more on that here in just a minute. So I mentioned a bunch of these already about job coaching assistance. A couple things that maybe I didn't mention, right, might be advocacy, right? Advocacy is one of these things where a person who is, out in the workforce, has a sense of making sure they are, getting everything that they need, right? Employers are working with employees all the time and making sure that, they're feeling comfortable in their job to some extent, make sure that they're feeling like they're receiving the right amount of training and support and all those types of things. And in some cases, we have job coaches who are helping clients understand what advocacy means, what it means to say, hey, I need a little bit more help with this. Or, hey, I'm doing really good with these tasks over here. I don't need as much help with that. Those types of things where a person's able to advocate for themselves in the workplace. Job coaches do serve as a sort of liaison. Oftentimes we have a client that a job coach is working with who, because they're starting a new job, they're not just going to jump in and be super comfortable with, their supervisor and coworkers immediately. Most of us aren't like that either. So they might be sharing things with their job coach about the job, and then the job coach can coordinate with a supervisor and talk about those things. So they do work and act as a liaison. I think we've pretty much covered the other bullet points here as far as what job coaching assistance looks like. We do have a couple starred things at the bottom there that just mention, that job coaching, again, it's generally going to be funded by vocational rehabilitation or another agency, and that, they are insured and all of that. Thanks, Josh. So let's talk a little bit about supervisor and manager support. Okay. Supervisors, managers, anybody that's really in a role like that or has that kind of capacity within, at an employer, there's going to be some things that they're going to need to understand, right? One bullet we put on here, ADA, right? Americans with Disabilities Act, right? Understanding what that means for, employing a person with a disability. Being able to work with the employee, collaborate, and find solutions about things, make sure that the accommodations are in place that need to be, make sure the accommodations are doing what we all hope they do, right? The employer does have a responsibility to maintain confidentiality, right, in relation to a person's disability, right? Making sure that if that person, isn't divulging that to everybody, that's something that's kept confidential. As far as performance goes, right, this individual is still going to have performance reviews, right? You're going to make sure that that performance review is fair. Is this person meeting standards that are expected by the employer, and then using that to fairly look at their performance. There's a few other things here about modifying training and workflow. Yeah, that might happen. That might be an accommodation, for example. Maybe somebody just needs a little bit of extra training, right? There's just a slight modification there. Okay. We mentioned job carving on this slide as well. Job carving is where maybe there's a task or a responsibility that this employee, maybe they're really struggling with it. Maybe it's something that they're not really comfortable doing, or maybe it just seems like their skill with it isn't quite improving. Job carving would be having somebody else basically take on that responsibility. And at the same time, maybe this client does a fantastic job with a particular responsibility, and maybe that's something that can be carved away from another employee, allowing that employee to focus on other things, and then this person takes on a little bit more of that responsibility because they do it really well. It's kind of just a little aspect of supported employment that many people aren't really aware of, but it does happen in the workforce anyway. We just happen to have a name for it. Some other things that might come up are things with being flexible with like remote work and stuff like that. Assistive technology is another one that's people may not know about or think about. We have an entire center for assistive technology at vocational rehabilitation where they will assess an individual, kind of determine if there's some type of tool, some form of technology that might help them, better perform their job responsibilities. Even things like, tablets that might help with scheduling things, or, having something in their hand where they're being reminded about, hey, I got to go do this at this time, just stuff like that. And then lastly, just educating people on, disability. Even though disabilities are prevalent throughout society, it's not something that's often talked about or known, sort of the general population that's out in the workforce. Talking about coworkers and colleagues. Okay, so we have mentioned some of this already, where coworkers are working side by side, helping somebody. Colleagues, just kind of a different term, but maybe somebody who's familiar with the job responsibilities, and can help. Right, they're around, they're nearby, they're approachable. Right, somebody can go to them and say, "Hey, can you help me with this a little bit?" And they're the type of person who says, "Yeah, let me come and show you how we do that. Let's see how well you do." Okay. Coworkers and colleagues do have some responsibility in, the integration and that inclusivity in the workplace, right? Because they might be spending more time around this individual than the supervisor or manager, right? Because of that, they do share some of that responsibility of making somebody feel welcome. We've probably all been in that situation before. We may have been the welcoming employee or colleague, or we may have been starting a new job, and we might have been looking around thinking, boy, I hope somebody, kind of talks to me and helps me feel, welcome here. It's my first day or whatever. This could also be a chance for mentoring, right? Um, and I put the formal and informal here because there are two types. Formal could be actually set up as part of a training period, right, for a new employee, where you have a formal mentor who's assigned, and they're going to be the one that the new employee goes to regularly. Or informal, where it's more like what I've already been talking about, where you just kind of say, "Hey, can I get some quick help with this?" Or, "Hey, I just have a question about how to clock in and clock out appropriately. Can you help me with that?" Okay. Um, these people are going to know the tips and tricks, right? They know the responsibilities of the job, but hey, hopefully they've got, some knowledge and a little bit of wisdom as to how to do the job, maybe a little bit better. So they might have some tips for our new employee, which is great. And then that inclusivity, right? And making sure that the new team member knows, hey, we've got a birthday party thing coming up, today, and everybody goes and does this and we sing, or, whatever that kind of looks like. All right. So as far as mentoring and coaching, so I mentioned that we talk a little bit about this. Um, so mentoring and coaching is where there's an individual who is sort of the go-to, right? This is the person who is hopefully a subject matter expert on like what the job entails. Hopefully, they have experience that they can draw from. But at least this is the person who we're going to be using, right, to stay with these new employees as they're learning the new job. So they're going to do some of the stuff that we've talked about previously that the employer has a responsibility for, right? That orientation to the workplace, that training that occurs for all new hires, um, and then the review, right? The feedback and providing just a little bit of help with like, hey, your responsibilities, you've been doing really well in these areas, and then these are some areas where maybe we need to focus a little bit more, right? Um, we've listed emotional support here, right? At times when we're starting a new job, we want to like, you know, jump in there and do a great job, but sometimes it can be uncomfortable, right? Emotionally, might be feeling a little bit anxious, or apprehensive because we're starting a new job. And this is a person, a mentor here, like is somebody that you would want to be pretty enthusiastic, pretty motivated, pretty upbeat, who can help be that emotional support to that other individual. They can talk about the company's, insights, what the expectations are for the position and for their employees, right? And then providing just, we've got advice here, right? They can provide advice. They can provide insights and guidance to this new employee. So it's a great pattern, whether it's formal or informal. And I'm sorry, Josh, are you taking? I forgot if you were taking this one or if we were transitioning. I think I've got one more here. Okay.
This is your
So
last one.
yeah, that's what I thought. So just the kind of last information here in regards to the mentoring and the coaching, right? This is a pretty effective tool to use, right? Especially if it's something you're offering to new employees and they sign on and then they find out that they're going to have a mentor or a coach there that's going to be helping them. This also, so we have talked about the skills, the work habits, and productivity, and everything that comes along with building these types of work relationships. It's very true if somebody in particular has been designated as this mentor. Um, we found that employees are going to feel a little bit more satisfied if they're getting that type of support. At least many of them will. And then it has a feeling of this promotion of development, yeah, within the workplace. Okay, like if you have somebody who's been through it for several years and then they're mentoring a new employee and that new employee is looking at them saying, hey, wow, this person's great. I think I'm like, developing some respect for this person. Maybe this is like the pathway that I want to be on, right? So they're thinking about that development within your organization. And then it talks a little bit about the organization's culture, attitudes within the organization, right? I think we talked quite a bit about culture and bringing somebody in and making them feel welcome. And then as far as the work community, right? We've what we've got here is it's an inexpensive way to impact the work community because you're giving a new employee or new employees somebody that they can go to, right? Somebody that they can ask questions of, somebody that they can look to for a good example. And that's definitely going to have a positive impact on the work environment. And then we've got kind of the big, like, awesome statement like, hey, this is an opportunity to really shape the workforce of tomorrow, right? Passing down knowledge that certain employees have to their new employees so that that can then be passed down. Everybody's doing a great job and taking their responsibilities seriously, and their performance improves. It's a wonderful pathway and tool. And I think with that, I'll be passing this over to Josh for just a minute here. Yep.
Yeah. Jason also added some links there at the bottom of some great resources if you have additional questions or want to look more into this. So definitely thank you for that, Jason. So we'll continue to move forward here. Um, we'll just go over some of the basic stuff that the business relations team does. A lot of what we do is connecting with our human resources department, providing supports and training, especially around advocacy, accommodations, changing the culture or updating the culture of a business, talking about benefits and how to integrate, the support of people with disabilities in the workforce. So, quick reminder, the employee must be able to do the essential functions of the job. So, a lot of the times that we tell our employers we aren't here for a charity case. We are here to support you as an employer be successful, and we are supporting individuals who have and can do the jobs that you are trying to fulfill or fill at your work site. A little bit about accommodations, undue hardship. I think this is the one that comes up the most. We want to make sure that in the accommodation process, we're taking into consideration not only the employer and what they need to be, employee and what they need to be successful, but also the ability of the employer to provide and support with accommodations. Sometimes there are undue hardships, and those are things that we navigate through. But the key thing that we want to say and that we want to mention here and is with accommodations is that it's a back and forth, it's a conversation. All right. We don't want something to be a new employee to come in and say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I need. Give me this or else. And then an employer be like, well, I guess we're going to go with or else because we can't support this. It's an undue hardship. No, we want it to be a back and forth conversation. What's going to work for both parties so that both parties can be successful? We don't want this to disrupt any part of the workflow. We want to make sure that the workflow continues the same way that it did. It's just we are providing an accommodation that helps the individual be successful, not only for themselves on the job, but for you as the employer. So a lot of the things that we have seen over the past several years are affinity groups, business resource groups, these types of things that really support the different groups, the different employees, their backgrounds that might be different. This really helps employees feel supported in their workplace. It fosters that sense of belonging. It improves engagement, opportunity and access for advancement, amplifies voices. There have been a lot of different studies over the years where if you bring somebody new into an employment situation and then you support them, you see these advancement opportunities, you see the collaboration, you see the connection, and you see the positive growth within the workforce. So this is what some of these programs support at different employment sites. Definitely something to look into. So transitioning from a job coach to natural supports, I think Jason talked a lot about this, and so I will be brief here. But as even from business relations and what we mention to employers is making sure that you're working closely with that job coach. Make sure you know who they are, what they're doing, how they're helping, and how you can support the job coach as well so that that employee can transition once that job coach leaves. Making sure that you are connecting with the job coach and the employee on a regular basis. Develop an internal plan. I think that's really huge when making that transition of, hey, we know that, as a job coach, you're going to transition. What does this look like for you? What does this look like for this situation? How can we further support this? And what's this timeline look like so that we are prepared once that fades away and fades out? And continue to have those conversations as you move forward. So business relations services, a lot of what my team does is a lot of one-on-one supports with our employers. We talk about accommodations. We talk about networking with other businesses because sometimes, you're like, Josh, I've heard a lot from you. This is great information, but I want to hear it from a business partner. Excellent. Let's set that up. Let's get you connected with other business partners who have done this, who've been through this, who have a lot of experience with this. Or maybe there's another business partner that's in the same situation you are, and collaborating together can help work through this process. We want to set that up. I mean, I know that my team's great, but that doesn't mean you always have to listen to us. There are other people out there who can support you. We also want to provide additional resources and assistance to you. We have our biannual employer workshop which is coming up in March again, and then our Workability Career Fair, which will be in April. So hopefully you can attend those in the future. So as I just mentioned, here are the events that are up and coming. We also hold other lunch and learn events like this that we will host throughout the time. Or throughout the year. So not just our employer workshops and career fairs. We have lunch and learns where we try and provide updates, resources, information to not only job seekers, job coaches, but also our employer partners. There might be topics that you want to learn more about. Maybe we've presented on those already, or maybe that's something that we need to present on. So let us know information that you would like to hear, and then we can share that with the community in a situation like this, or a presentation like this, I should say. As I said, you don't always have to talk to me and my team. We do have the Utah Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities. That is a group of employers. They host an event as well. This will be next September. We just had this last one in September where we host some training and the Golden Key Awards. And so there's more information. So once you get the slide deck here, anything that's here in blue, you can click on their hyperlinks so you can get more information here and check out past videos from past events and past and previous winners of the Golden Key Awards. Essentially, it's recognizing employers' supports who have gone above and beyond supporting people with disabilities. It's a great opportunity to connect with those business partners as well, and you can see who they are from those videos. Disability in Utah. This is another network here in Utah that we have of business partners. Disability In is global, but we do have an affiliate here in Utah so that you can connect with Utah businesses and local businesses who are supporting people with disabilities. So here's some additional information on that. We do have an email listserv. So whether you are a job seeker or a job coach, CRP agency, you are more than welcome to receive these emails. Just send an email to us, and then, interesting, that is not the email. However, I think you can find the email there, but the email is pwdnetjobs@utah.gov, and I'll make sure to send that out once we send the slide deck. But it's a way that job seekers and job coaches can receive job leads from our employer network. And then employers can also email us there and share their openings that they have that they're trying to fill so that we can share that out with our community. Jason's last slide talked about the Job Accommodation Network. And he talked, I think his link went to more like mentoring, job coaching. Job Accommodation Network has a lot of other additional resources that you can look at, more information about specific disabilities, specific accommodations, a lot of resources, and you can get lost in there. Not saying that it's hard to navigate, just saying that you can go essentially down a rabbit hole and just research a lot of information. Definitely a great resource to look at. Social media, we do have social media, so look at these. The other place that I would say connect with our team is on LinkedIn. That is a great place where we connect with business partners, job seekers, other resources, and also share job opportunities. Here's my team's contact information. You have Leah Lovato, myself, Ben Baldonado, who covers the southern part of the state, and then Rebecca, who is our work-based learning employment specialist. She covers the state. So if you have or are working with youth, if you're employers that would like to connect with youth, Rebecca is that contact for you. This is a presentation survey, so please, if you have a moment, if you could respond to this survey, let us know what you like, what you didn't like, how we can improve. Just great information to help us make this better for you. Please let us know. And with that, are there any questions?
Hey, Josh, this is Leah. I just wanted to add a reminder that our services are statewide, and we do have events like job fairs statewide as well, Moab, Northern Utah in Logan, a Tooele job fair. And if it's something that businesses are interested in, we're happy to host, smaller event employer workshops or job fairs in their area.
Definitely. The one thing that I did not mention that is coming up the end of February, first part of March, wow, is our mentoring event. And that is something where we will connect with business partners and job seekers so that a job seeker can get a one-on-one, either phone call or virtual meeting to kind of get some business information, whether that be, reviewing a resume, mock interviews, learning more about a business, connecting with a professional, that sort of thing. That is coming up. So be watching out for that. And then as far as employers, if you are interested in connecting with youth, but you're like, hey, we don't have any jobs for youth, but we would like to connect with the youth population, we do mentoring events for youth where either we have somebody from your business come out to a school, or we have a group of students come out to your business site and get a tour and get kind of an idea of what you do and what it's like to work for you. So those are some other things that we can do. So let us know how you'd like to connect. We're more than happy to connect with you and set something up. Any other questions? While you're thinking of your questions, I'll just let you know, once we get the recording, we will share this out with all of those who have registered. If you have connected with employers that would like to receive this information that we're here today, please reach out to us, let us know. We're going to look at trying to share this with them because we know we've had a lot of business partners ask about job coaching supports and natural supports and how that all works. So please let us know so that we can connect, provide this resource to them, and maybe provide some additional support and training. Again, everybody, I thank you so much for being here with us today. Jason took the time out of his day. We're grateful that he was here to share information. And this is proof. We are here, at least on my screen, we're side by side. We are two different people. We are not the same people. So let us know how we can help. And we look, now you just confused them. We hope to connect with you in the near future. So please let us know. Thank you so much.